Good morning. Welcome to the Maximum Mom podcast today. Today, I have Corinne Heggie with me, and I cannot wait to dive in and talk to her about all the things. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Elise. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you. I always want to start out just so we can get it on the table, and especially since you and I talked about it a little already. Tell us a little bit about what makes you a mom. Like, who is your family at home?
Sure. So I am the proud mother of three boys, and I'm married to my husband, John, who also happens to be my law partner. And my family, beyond our nuclear group of five, I'm lucky enough to live in the area close to where I grew up and have some of my siblings in the area too. So I'm one of five siblings, and I'm lucky enough to have four of them in a close distance to me. And my youngest sister is in Dallas, and thanks to technology, she's never far away.
That's amazing that there's four of you there. Are your parents still in the area? Are they still living?
My parents are still living, and they're also in the area.
That's amazing. What an amazing opportunity for you, your husband, and your children. I mean, to have that kind of family around.
It's been a really a blessing because they get to know their grandparents and get to know their cousins and their aunts and uncles in a really kind of unique way because of the opportunities we have to be with each other often. So you get to know them in a much more kind of robust way than if we were
Absolutely
spread out.
Oh, I just think that's amazing. I mean, we really hope for that. I have no idea if it'll work out. We have 6 children between us. And the thought of being able to have cousins together and have those relationships that can last and be strong because they're based on real contact, that's something that would be really important to our family as well. And we love having all the young adult kids come together. And so I just think that's amazing for your family.
It is. It's really, we're very lucky. It's truly a blessing.
Well, I have to just put out there, since we were talking about boys, we both have 3 boys. And so we were discussing football and the joys of football and swimming, which interestingly, both of our boys, mine are older, Corinne's are right in the middle of this, dealing with it now, but being able to do both those sports. And I have such positive, warm feelings about football for young boys. And I know there's a lot of health concerns and people worry about, the head injury possibilities and all the things related to that. But I mean, football brings such a structure to boys. I would love to hear your take on how you have managed some of because there's a big juggle of getting kids to these practices. They're long, they're intense. I mean, what has been your experience navigating football as well as swimming with your boys?
Well, I'm really lucky to have a true partner in my husband. So we do a lot of tag teaming. And I think with the boys, it's with school, and when school's in session, it's just, you have to get your homework done or completed as best you can. So we're just tackling loose ends right after practice. And there's a lot of equipment with football, so I think it's an added bonus, at least with football, is trying to empower the kids. Okay, you have to get your pads, your mouth guard, your water bottle ready, so we can be football ready and walking out the door at X time. And at least in our house right now, the boys are energized by it. They like it. There's never complaining about it. So
right.
They'll deliver, they know what their deliverables are, and they will take care of it. And the same with swimming. I mean, you just have to get the during the school year is really the tough part, just because you want to make sure they've gotten the homework or as much of it done. So you're just after practices and dinner, batting cleanup.
Right. Yeah, for us, football was interesting because it was right after school. So especially high school ball, they stayed right after school and often till about 6 or 6:30. So there was no getting their homework done before, which was always interesting, because they would come home and, after a long day of school, 3 hours of football and dinner, homework is not the easiest thing to pull off then. And
Right.
so there were definitely some discussions around time management. And I had some children who were like super good at getting up early and doing homework. They preferred to wake up before school and get it done and go to bed earlier. Whereas others were like, oh no, I'm staying up. And, so it was interesting. I found that whole juggling the extracurricular and homework to be a real thing, trying to kind of maximize what worked best for each child.
Right. I think we're going to have to get nimble there too, Elise, because I don't have anyone in high school yet. So we still have people coming home,
Right.
some time before practice starts. So
Yeah.
that'll be a new frontier for us next year.
Yeah, but it sounds like you are so on your way to success. The fact that you have a partner who not only is your law partner, so who completely understands your work and
Yeah.
that whole arena, but who is truly a partner in your home. I mean, I just think you are heads above what so many people have. And it is game changing to really be able to share this experience with a true partner, don't you think?
I couldn't agree with you more, Elise. Absolutely. I mean, you've hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah, it just makes all the difference. And I don't know if you've ever read, I mean, I literally should become the marketing director for Eve Rodsky's book, Fair Play, but it sounds like you probably wouldn't even need to read it, like you all have it down pat, but it is such a good read for couples to help them understand how to truly share and be true partners, because I think so many couples find themselves in that situation where the woman, and it's usually the woman, I don't mean to be stereotypical, but
Yeah.
it's realistic. The woman is often delegating what needs to be done. So she has thought about it all, planned it all, paid for it all, signed up for it all, filled out a million emails, bought equipment, done whatever. Whereas if you can actually divide the tasks in such a way where you're focused on ownership, it is game changing for families. I mean, I have seen families be able to revolutionize how they divvy up tasks by using Eve's game and book. She has a card game that really is just helpful just to pull a card and talk about it and really think about all the tasks that lead up to a football practice. And I know, I mean, you don't just show up for practice.
No, there's a runway.
Definitely there is a runway. I love that term. It's so true. And boy, is it long on some things.
Yep.
Yeah, and kind of bumpy. Well, tell us about your practice. And I want to know more about you and your husband's practice working together. I've always been intrigued by married partners.
Yeah, so we have a practice where, we're just north of Chicago. And our job, or the main focus of our work, is protecting families, individuals, and business owners from court battles, asset loss, and taxes with wills, trusts, powers of attorney. And then if someone has to go to court because a beneficiary wasn't named and a judge will decide to whom property will be distributed, we can go to probate court too.
Okay. So you have a very comprehensive practice, estate planning practice, or I mean, what would you call it?
Yeah, I would say estate planning is how I would describe it to other lawyers.
Right. Okay, cool. And how long have you all been in practice?
The firm has been in existence for 40 years, and we were lucky enough to be the succession plan for the founder. And so we've been here at the helm for, I think, about closing in on 5 years.
Wow, good for you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How many other team members do you have in your firm besides you and your husband?
We have one other lawyer, and then we have a great team member, Mallory, who helps us in the office with really everything.
Mallory's like the go-to person, for all.
Right. She sits at the center of everything, and runs air traffic control.
She's handling that runway.
Yes. And telling
That's
people,
awesome.
Clients, vendors, everyone when they can come in, John and myself when we can come in, when we can come off.
I love that. Everybody needs a Mallory. I mean, I always joke like I needed an Alice in our Brady bunch of 6. But your Mallory sounds pretty impressive.
Oh, she is. She is. I only wish we could have, we were really lucky when the kids were growing up to have worked with 2 women who helped us over the span of 11 years.
Oh,
So it really, I mean, it's game changing when you've got support to help you do what you need to do at home and in the office.
absolutely. Well, what are some of the things you have learned? Like if you were to give advice to somebody, who's maybe earlier on in their path than you are, I mean, what are some of those things you've learned about how to juggle this trifecta that we juggle of being, lawyers, moms, law firm owners? I mean, there's a lot going on in those 3 roles. And when you put them all together, I mean, there's days that I marvel that we're able to get anything done. I mean, what are some of your tips that you've learned along the way?
Sure. Well, I would think one just kind of overarching tip is that, your career and your life and wherever they find themselves in the middle of that Venn diagram converging, it's a jungle gym, and you're going to take some steps forward, maybe a step or 2 back, take some steps sideways before you take 10 steps forward, and to just know that it's a jungle gym and not, it doesn't have to be a linear path that's always on an upward trajectory.
Oh gosh, I think that is so, so important for people to hear, that it's okay that it's a jungle gym and that it's expected to be a jungle gym. And sometimes you might be on a straight downward trajectory. I mean, when you're,
Yeah,
doing
no,
a
right.
flip on your gym, you could be upside down at times. And that's okay. That's part of the jungle gym. And you're going to flip it back around at some point. But
Exactly.
yeah, gosh, I've never thought of it like that. What an amazing visual to think about it as a jungle gym, because it truly is. And I feel like, and I wonder how you feel about this, people often look to others who might be further along. And I feel this, sometimes people will be like, well, Elise, why do you do this? Or how can you do this? I'm like, mine are young adults now. Like I'm not,
Right.
dealing with little bitty kids and things like that. And I think that we have to be so careful not to compare ourselves to somebody who's in a completely different cycle of life.
Right. I mean, you have to, exactly. It's where you are in your career, where you are in terms of the lifespan or where your family is, and just taking it where it is measured for you and your family and your business or your career, which is hard to do.
It is. Oh, I think it's so hard to do in today's world, and especially with the pandemic. I mean, I think, all spent more and more time like on social media, and, social media, we could have a whole conversation about that, and how, I mean, there are so many days I want to just put on social media, like the true shit that's going on. I want to say, like, I burned dinner. I don't feel like doing my work. Like my dog pooed on my carpet and I lost my cat.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and people would think I was crazy though if I did that. But I just feel like there's so much lacking in what gets put out there and what people are very often falsely comparing themselves to.
No, agreed. And I'm sure you probably had to do this too, Elise, when your children were a little bit younger, but I mean, you got a parent through social media too, and trying to coach them in something that, I didn't grow up with.
Right. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but I mean, and I think that would just kind of morph into another tip I've learned is you've got to give yourself grace,
Yeah.
because you got to be kind and good to yourself and give yourself a break every once in a while. I think women are very hard. I think most people are hard on themselves. I think a lot of lawyers are hard on themselves.
I agree.
I think it's just much more acute for women attorneys. And you have to, and I can't tell you that I've had to, this is something I have to remind myself of.
Right.
And I've, and it's not easy, but you do, you're human. And the day will, the day will come, night will turn into day, and the sun will rise.
Right.
And every problem is solvable. But you can't beat yourself up.
Well, I would love to explore with you. Because I think it is so important to have that grace. How does grace show up for you? I know for me, my version of grace is I have to shut down my mean girl. I call her Eloise. And so I sometimes have to silence her. I'll be like, Eloise, you are in timeout. So you need to be quiet, because she'll be in there in my head talking ugly and just really being very damaging. How do you give yourself grace?
You just have to, it's not easy.
Right.
You've got to just remove yourself from the situation. Usually with me, it's like going to walk, and whether it's a long walk or a short walk, it could just be outside down the driveway, taking a beat and then coming back, or walking the parking lot at our office,
Right.
And just trying to really talk yourself back to like a status quo, or to zero. I guess a little bit like you telling that evil voice to just knock it off.
Right.
It's a psychological, I feel it, there's a physical component, I guess, for me, because I usually do have to walk away from something and physically remove myself from the place where the noise is being made, even if it's shortly, and then just get yourself back to, square one.
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting. And I don't do that. I am not a walk away type, but I could see where that could be really beneficial. I actually am going to think about that, because sometimes I think just the act of getting up, getting in a new environment, breathing fresh air, that can be very helpful in just turning your mind and being able to restructure how you're looking at a problem.
Yeah. And I got the physical piece. This is like maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago, because when I would have an issue, I'm like, okay, I got to get into the computer. I got to get into the file. I got to find, what did I do? Go through all the emails, start wanting to immediately triage. And it might not have even been a problem,
Right.
but the perceived issue, or the perceived question, or the perceived, next step. And then I would be tense, and I'm over the computer, and I'm sure my brow is knitted.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I gotta step out. I have to take a pause here.
Right.
And so that's how I came to that. But that was only because, after being physically, having the stress manifest itself, not only psychologically and mentally, but physically, it would take forever to get unwound.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, well, so there's a physical component for me. And so being able to step up and walk away is helpful.
Well, yeah, because you're really kind of counteracting that physical manifestation of all that stress before it even gets to that point,
Right.
You're kind of stopping yourself from getting all wound up. Well, that brings me back to when, like we mentioned before about law school, when we were talking before, we need to teach these things. There's so much that law school is missing. Just huge amounts. And I think teaching how to practice self-care and how to handle the stress of our work would be so beneficial, because I think practicing law, obviously I don't know statistically. I know there's many other professions clearly that are very stressful as well. And so I don't mean to say that the law is unique in that, but the law, I do think, is very stressful if we were to look at professions. And we just don't get lessons on how to handle it. And I think when you add in the mother piece, the law firm ownership, and the leadership that's required, oftentimes we don't have education in that either. What was your experience coming out of school, like as you did this succession plan, took over this firm? What leadership training did you have? What kind of things were there, or have you been learning on your own, like I know many of us have had to do?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of things I learned in law school, and then there's a lot of things I didn't. But I think I learned a lot from practicing first at a larger law firm, first as an associate, then as a partner. I mean, you learn a lot there.
Oh, yeah.
Just about management and deliverables and how to kind of energize people who are coming up behind you if you want to free up your time so you can get clients. And
Yeah.
you know, and I was lucky when I was at a large law firm. I was selected by the management committee to serve as a fellow for the firm at Leadership Council for Legal Diversity, which was really it's a 1-year program. The group is still in existence. Wow. Putting you know, leaders from, or to be leaders from law firms with to be leaders from corporate legal departments. And I learned a lot in that 1 year.
Yeah.
That I'm very fortunate to have had that experience. I learned a lot about leadership and how to energize people, not necessarily when a client's involved, through bar association work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the president of the Women's Bar Association of Illinois in 2019, 2020 for a year-long term. And that was really helpful when I was in the positions leading up to stewarding the organization for that year. And then a lot of it I found, and I don't mean to be flip, is things that you learned when you were little. I mean, check your gut, really be kind to everyone.
Right.
And maybe no means no for just right now. It's not no forever, which has been really helpful for me in terms of, you know, building clients and building a book of business, because, you know, it's a different skill to go out there and be the one who's the face of, you know, the firm or the company, wherever you are, to try and get business and make those asks. And knowing that no is just no for right now really, at least for me, helped bring the barrier much lower, and just being able to do it and knowing that, you know, I'm going to get, and I do. I mean, it's not like I get yes my entire life for anything. I mean,
No, for sure not.
But it's been helpful in the business development world. And, you know, I try to read books, and I'm really lucky too that there's a lot of perspective that my law partner and my husband brings to it too, that from his experiences that aren't necessarily similar to mine.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I love hearing about your work with the Bar Association. I can't imagine what that was like for you during the pandemic. I mean, that must have been a fascinating presidential year between 2019 and 2020.
Yeah, it definitely took a twist. You know, so the bar year, or at least it seems to be in the Northern Illinois kind of bar association community, the bar leadership years are usually May to May or June to June. So it's a little bit off. It's a little bit off cycle. So I was fortunate enough to have a lot of the programming or the deliverables that I had on the calendar take place before the pandemic changed the narrative. So I was fortunate in that regard. And then I had a great board. There is still a great board. I'm no longer on it. So we were really able to pivot and get the final meetings taken care of, close the budget, and then, which was a big lift, to get the next year's election for the next officer role and the board of directors role taken care of in a virtual setting, which was a total group effort and would not have been if the group of leadership that year hadn't been so committed to doing it, we would never have been able to do it. So, but that was, so the pandemic I was on the tail end of it only by virtue of the way that I happened to have the calendar, worked with the executive director and the board to have the calendar planned that year. So,
wow. Yeah.
But it was, you know, there was a lot of, you get a lot of access, and you meet a lot of other bar association leaders and leaders in the state. And it was funny when, after the pandemic kind of gripped the whole country by the end of March that year, it was really, I will look back fondly on the conversations I had with other bar leaders. What are you doing? How are you doing? How are your groups? How can we support each other? You know,
Right.
what are you doing about your elections? You have so many more members than we do, or we don't have nearly as many as you do. Do you have any pointers? It was really a true collegiality and just a generosity of knowledge and spirit that we were all able to kind of share with one another and kind of pluck in a good way from each
Right.
other's experience to help our organizations, you know, continue to move forward as best we could in that, you know, in that March, April, May, June, the first couple of months of the pandemic.
That's amazing. I love that, to hear about, you know, collegial kind of collaboration. I feel like that is something that a lot of times feels missing when we're practicing law day to day in the trenches. You know, I know, at least in our practice area, family law, there are times that I'm like, whoa, did everybody wake up angry today? And, you know, people
Yeah.
will,
Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of humanity that sometimes you feel has kind of dropped off
absolutely.
off the screen when you're doing some of this work. And, you know, I'm sure you did, and I did. I know I did. Try and pick up the phone. Even if someone's like, you know, this isn't a great time, I'm like, okay, you know, let's just maybe, we've had a couple of emails. Let's see if maybe 5 minutes can help us get maybe not to total agreement, but at least maybe take 5 of the 10 issues off the table. So we're only looking at 5.
Exactly. Well, and sometimes just taking that edge off the perceived conflict can be the only thing that is gained from such a phone call. But wow, can that help moving forward, when I find sometimes people forget to assume that we're working with good intentions on both sides, you know?
Right. No, and you have to remind yourself. I mean, I think 2 weeks ago I got a letter, I don't know, on something, and the tone was like, okay, all right, this is, I don't know. No, it was a noteworthy tone. I'll just leave it at that. And
Right.
I, you know, did have to forward it to the client, and the client got hot under the collar. And I said, you know
Sure.
what, I'm going to call, and I'm just going to say, now listen, I haven't talked to the person who wrote this letter, but I think everyone is just trying to move the ball forward. And let's just think that we're all coming from that same place.
Exactly.
And I know I'm going to have that frame of mind when I place the phone call. And I
Right.
just want I want to encourage you to kind of maybe come around to that frame of mind. It doesn't have to be right now.
Right.
Say whatever you want to me, but you know, but it's hard.
Oh, it's really hard. I mean, I know in our family law practice, like you know, I have to send these things on to a client. And oftentimes when I'm getting something from a lawyer that's really nasty or disrespectful in a way, and then I'm sending it on to my client, I have to preface that everything to the client with, this is not how you should resolve conflict. This would not be the kind of communication I've been trying to teach you, you know, to work with your ex on. And so it's very counterproductive, because I find as attorneys, we're in the best place to model respectful conflict resolution. And when we're not doing that, I mean, at least in the family law arena, I really feel very bad and complicit almost in the problem when we're sending those things on to our clients, because I feel like we're just not helping them as they're moving forward through what can be the most important conflict they've probably ever dealt with. And learning to handle it respectfully and with proper boundaries is going to be game changing for their families moving forward. And not creating hostile conflict is, you know, one of my highest goals. And so, yeah, I find those conversations with lawyers, you know, those are interesting, because I often will say, like, you just sent a nasty gram, and that's not helpful to the families we're working with. Like, how can we do this better? You know, where we're modeling what we want to see in them, not the reverse.
Right. I mean, it's a constant, and I have to remind myself too. And then you've got to remind clients, because you're going to get more resolved when you can, have your reaction. I'm not saying people have to check their emotions at the door. I think that's also part of the process in some of the work we do. Certainly when someone's no longer here and we're, distributing assets and the contours there. But yeah, you got to remind them, and you've got a conflict resolution can be done respectfully and courteously.
Yeah. Well, it's such an important thing. I think even it's interesting. I mean, I think of it in our homes, excuse me, with our families, and then it gets carried over into other places, our work and just out in general. And I mean, I find that sometimes in our homes, and I know in my home, I mean, I've struggled with this and I've watched my children struggle with it. And I mean, I try to bring it up where even if they're talking to each other in kind of a crass, like move over or hand me this, I'm like, we need to treat each other differently. Like we need to say please, we need to say thank you, and we need to think about our tones, because it's so easy, I think, to fall in a habit of not being courteous. And that is a slippery slope, I think. And it's not one that I want to be on. I mean, I try really hard to not be on that slope of discourteousness and not really showing gratitude and appreciation and kindness to the people that I'm closest to, who I'm around all the time. And I know raising kids, there are many times that was very hard, very, very, very hard.
No, it is. It is. I mean, I can't tell you, yesterday alone on a Sunday, I was like, can we just all check our tone?
Right.
I mean, I just don't, the tone here. What do you mean? I didn't mean it that way. I'm like, well, your tone says otherwise. I mean, and I'm not saying we have to all have a loving embrace around getting our things ready for tomorrow, but we don't have to be snarky about it.
Exactly.
We can just be matter of fact. It's Sunday night. We don't have to, it's not Friday night, but yeah, it's not easy. Certainly not easy when you're trying to model and teach children, but they're a good reminder.
Oh, I found my children were the most humbling, like people around me to help me see the errors of my ways and my many faults. I often have to thank them or think about them when I'm struggling with something. And I'm like, this would be what they were talking about. And it's very humbling. I found raising children to be, and still do, obviously, even though they're young adults, it is so humbling. And I'm very appreciative of those lessons from.
Oh, as am I. I mean, you've put it, there's no other way to put it.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. Well, I'm really glad to hear, though, that another person thinks about the tone in their homes, because I do think that when I hear that mantra of, oh, kids will always fight or boys will always fight. And I've heard this, obviously, raising 3 boys. This was a major thing I heard a lot. And it's so interesting. And I mean, I have to credit my ex-husband for this. And he was so strong about, there is no law that says, the older boy is going to beat up a younger boy. Like, that's just not a thing. And so he was really very cued into that. And when I can honestly say that my oldest son has never, ever laid a finger on his youngest brother, ever, like, that to me is important and it's positive. And people like, that's so weird. But they just didn't. I mean, our children were not allowed to kind of be, super vicious with each other, just under the name of siblings will be siblings. And it's been interesting to watch as they're young adults and as their relationships develop as adults. And I could not be more thrilled with how they treat each other now. And it makes me just happy that they look to each other for things. And I think that tone piece, it really does matter, because I think kids can be really biting, to each other, and it can cause some real damage in families.
Oh, I don't disagree. I mean, I feel like I'm a little bit in the trenches and I don't know what the future holds, but
Right.
my goal is that, that they will be a resource for each other,
Totally.
emotionally and professionally, or however, just resources for each
Right.
other as they get older, wherever their lives take them. But yeah, I mean, and the what I have seen is just their words can really cut.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I don't, yeah, it's just, you have to constantly remind them, just like our words can cut.
Totally. Yeah.
I'm to be reminded often as well, but that, a younger sibling, a sly look of the eye and the tone and like
Yeah.
5 words can just cut like a knife. And
Oh,
you don't know. I mean, and it's you gotta jump on it, because it's going to take a long time for them to, and we're not perfect, Shay Heggie, but it's repetition, and you
right.
just can't do that. It's just not allowed.
Yeah, it is so interesting, I find, as a parent and then also as a lawyer, to see how words and behaviors and these things can truly damage people. I mean, I don't know, I just feel like it's been a lot of years of lessons of how impactful words can be, and tone, and just, I don't know. So I think I very much feel like, in general, kindness and civility and respect need to be such an important part of our work, both as moms, but as lawyers and law firm owners, and leading our teams as well. Not allowing that type of thing in a work environment either. And it's been, I don't know, it's a very big part of just what I am and who I feel about, how I feel about how things should be. And yeah, and obviously we look at our world, I sometimes think kindness is definitely a little bit lost currently.
Yeah, it just sometimes takes long absences from rooms, and you're like, why can't and it's a little bit harder to get it back. But I mean, I do believe that it can be there and it will be there. And more often than not, it is, because I'll always the things where the tone is just not right, or a little cutting, or the words weren't chosen with, better care, that are more memorable, right? That are seared into your mind. But I think it's there. I think most people want it to be there. It's just teaching it's hard, and you've got to be vigilant about it, because it's so easy to just not correct it, or to let it go, or say, I'll get it the next time.
It is. It really is. And I think you're so right when sometimes, not correcting it is a thing, because, we feel bad, or I don't know. I know for me, like, I feel like I'm nagging. I mean, I actually said something to one of my young adult children the other day. We had children here, and somebody said something, and I was like, whoa, that sounded really harsh. And it kind of took them back, because, here I am correcting, a mid 20-year-old person on, but I mean, they're my own child. So like, I can say that to them in some ways, but it was interesting. But I thought, I wonder if other people aren't saying that, like, and you do want it to be corrected, because I think it's so easy for people to overlook tone. I think tone is just, with the speed of our lives and the hustle of things, I think people often get really caught up in a negative tone, super accidentally and unintentionally.
Yeah, and that's harder to walk back when that happens. So you just, even if it's with a good morning, or just try and just start it at a neutral. Doesn't have to be, all sunshine and happy, but just at a neutral,
Right.
good afternoon, good morning, just kind of take it from zero, so we can get it back somewhere. You can walk it back from, if the tone, or the words don't match the moment.
Well, and that's something I think, as a mother of older children, like, if I could, think of the thing I would want to know if I was a young mom, I mean, that is something that would be something important, is, really paying attention to that, and not losing, that the basics, the please and the thank yous and the, I appreciate this, just some of the basic things that I think we lose, and we kind of don't expect in our own families. We just provide dinners, but people aren't necessarily like saying thanks for cooking tonight, or that was a good dinner, I appreciated that, or just
Right.
but I think those kinds of things are good to be thought about, taught, and they need to be all directions. I'm not at all saying children should only be thanking. I mean, parents need to be thanking and acknowledging when children are doing things and they're, making steps in the right direction, or, I mean, just all kinds of things, just we can find appreciation and gratitude for. And so I, as a young mom, I wish I had thought about this more intentionally. I mean, it kind of came on as I was getting to be an older mom. And, but it's something that I think really can set a tone for a family that can be really impactful.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Elise. I mean, and they see everything.
God, you, you definitely have to remind us of that. Is that all? Oh my gosh, that is so true.
I
I
mean,
have to
everything.
tell you, I mean, this is my horrible mom moment. When I dropped off kiddo number 6 at college just recently, literally the thing that I was most excited about was, I'm like, I can just be bad all the time and nobody's going to be watching me. I was like, I don't have to clean up the kitchen to the degree. I don't have to pick up everything like I feel like I've done for the last 20 something
Yeah.
years. And it's so funny, but it's so true how much modeling we do as parents and as leaders in a law firm. I mean, I think the same is true where you're just being watched all the time. And
Yeah.
it's an awesome responsibility. And I think that, I know for me, that's been a thing. Like, if you look in my closet now, it's messier. my kitchen is definitely a little messier because I know that I'm going to go and put the dish away later that day, but I wouldn't have left it there when my children were younger. Do you know what I mean? I would have
Yeah.
followed the process and gotten it in the dishwasher or unloaded the dishwasher if that was what was needed.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's every day, every hour.
Oh yeah. And you are in the thick of it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm, very blessed to have
Right.
children and a partner in John. But yeah, I mean, it's an awesome responsibility and one I take seriously and try to do my best. I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect by any stretch.
Oh gosh. But then that gives you an opportunity to point out your lack of perfection, which I think
Right.
is helpful as well.
No, agreed. Agreed.
I
Agreed.
mean, all the I'm sorry conversations I've had to have through the years of things I've done wrong. And those I think have been as powerful as watching me do some things right, but
Agreed.
letting them know how we're falling down. I mean, what do you think about learnings and having success through failure sometime? I mean, is that something you've experienced?
Oh yeah. I mean, certainly. I mean, I will say to them, I think I had a conversation with someone yesterday. I've learned a lot from things I've
Right.
failed. And when I failed it, you figure out, is it something that I really want? Because then you'll go back and tackle it with a renewed vigor to get, to get it done or complete the assignment, whatever it needs, whatever
Right.
that task was. And I'm sure there's situations where I probably haven't modeled failure well. In fact, I know there are. I try not to demonstrate it in front of the children because it's just going to make more that I'm going to have to do to explain why I did what I did and acted, probably not correctly. But I think there's a lot of power in failure, and the children have to learn that failure is okay and that they're going to be able, the sun is going to come up tomorrow and you're going to be fine. We're going to support you. I mean, and I say to my kids, there's nothing you can do that will make me love you less. So you don't have to lie to me. If there's a problem, come to us. We're going to help you. but we can't help you if we don't know. And honesty is at the, the foundation of all of that.
Yes, indeed.
So, yeah, I mean, we try to, it's going to happen, that I'd rather have them learn how to fail or experience it, I guess, now, because,
Absolutely.
life is going to hopefully for them be a marathon and a jungle gym, ups and downs, sideways, backwards. And if you have experienced failure, even if small, I think that's a learning experience and something on which to build and draw upon when the next failure comes.
I agree. I just think failure is life's greatest gift of teaching moments. I mean, I just think failure, it's a beautiful way to learn and create resilience. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I kind of got into well, no just means no for right now. It's not that every no is a failure. It's not.
Right.
Or it might feel like failure initially, but you just have to, kind of change the lens a bit and give it a different perspective.
Absolutely. I have so loved being able to talk to you today, and I really appreciate you spending your time and sharing your time with us on this podcast today. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of your week and your boys have a great year with both their football and their swimming.
Well, thank you, Elise, for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you and your audience. I want to commend you and your team for creating this platform for women who are lawyers, raising families, and those of us who have put the entrepreneur hat on and are running a firm or managing a firm, either alone or with a management team. It's really useful. I've enjoyed listening to almost every episode, and just want to thank you for creating this platform.
Oh, well, I'm so glad you've enjoyed it, and I love it. And I just think that we women who are doing all this, it's a pretty amazing group of humans. I mean, I every week am kind of mind blown what people are doing and how they're doing it. And so I really, really do appreciate your time. And I can't wait to be able to talk to you again sometime.
Thanks, Elise. I share the sentiment.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.